Opening the film with an IMAX sequence seemed just a terrific way to make an impression with the format and the audience, really throw them into the action. And when we came to shoot this prologue sequence, this bank heist, we'd never used the IMAX cameras before, we'd never used the technology before, so there were a lot of challenges.
The first 6 minutes of the film are what Chris calls the prologue. Chris had decided early on he wanted to shoot this in IMAX, so we all got really petrified that the very first thing we were going to shoot in the movie was this huge bank heist sequence with the Joker in full makeup and on IMAX.
On the top you can see 4 frames of 35 millimeter, and of course it goes through the projector up and down. And that's actually a print down of IMAX photography, and IMAX goes through the projector horizontally, and that's 4 frames of IMAX. It's about 9 times bigger, so that's why you get incredible resolution in the IMAX format.
IMAX is an immersive medium, obviously. You fill that whole screen, and then you just get more impact to the audience. And not just visually, IMAX sound is amazing also. You feel the movie and you see it.
This has been used a lot on helicopters for Grand Canyon and all that sort of stuff before, so people weren't unfamiliar with it, but what we wanted to do with it, and where Chris was taking us with IMAX, was using IMAX as a dramatic tool as opposed to a documentary tool.
Chris's perspective has always been, think of the IMAX films that you remember. They're the ones where the astronauts have had the camera in space. They've taken the cameras up Mount Everest. So if they can do that, then surely we can shoot on the streets of Chicago with an IMAX camera. And so the camera team and the grit, everybody had to really adjust the way they worked to work with these cameras.
We really wanted to maximize the use of the IMAX frame, and so this rig where the Joker's men are sliding down the cable from rooftop to rooftop was something I really wanted to get a very dramatic, vertiginous view. So we did this very elaborate helicopter shot coming up and over, just to really use the IMAX format for what it's best at, which is really giving people's stomach a bit of a lurch as they look down at an incredible drop. So we did a little rotation on the camera head as it went over, which was a complicated camera move to do.
When you see those guys going across the death slide, that's 2 stunt guys doing that for real from 2 real buildings in Chicago. There's a whole lot of prep goes into something which looks so simple. It is just 2 guys sliding down a wire, but you have to get permission from the building to rip all the walls out so that you can attach wires to girders. So even for something simple like that, the prep's phenomenal.
3 of a kind, let's do this.
No one knew it was going to be executed smoothly. No one knew whether you could shoot action sequences in IMAX. Because if you think about it, IMAX is generally a couple of penguins walking across a snowfield, or even NASCAR, but very long-held shots, with a camera on a fairly stable rig. You don't handhold IMAX, and we did in this. And the cinematographer will recover, I'm told.
The week that we spent shooting the bank heist sequence, the prologue, was IMAX school for all of us. We all learned what we were getting into with those cameras. I immediately learned how to deal with the weight of it and operating with the camera, what I could and could not accomplish in operating that camera.
One of our main fears was that the cameras are so heavy and cumbersome, we wouldn't be able to move the camera through the action the way you would want to, the way you would with a 35mm camera. But Bob Gorlick, our Steadicam operator, tried flying the lightest IMAX camera, the MSM camera, and found that he could actually use it very effectively, use it very much as he would a 35mm camera. It was a 5-day sequence, I think sometime after about the second day of using the Steadicam intensively, the arm actually sheared off, it broke off the vest and dropped the camera. Luckily Bob was okay and the camera was okay.
The film itself is extremely heavy, and then the camera around it is about 5 to 6 times the weight. With Steadicam, if you take the camera and just hold it out and put it on a scale, it might weigh 35 pounds, but when it's on a Steadicam, it's leveraged from your body. The weight increase is magnified. So I would say the IMAX is close to, it's over 100 pounds.
There's a different way you compose for IMAX. Because you're putting it on a screen that's 8 stories high, your vision doesn't naturally go to the top of the screen. So we kind of throw away a lot of what's in the top portion of the screen. Focus is much more critical. It's shallower depth of field, so the focus puller's really got to be on his game.
Keeping the actors in focus is much more difficult in IMAX. The area in the frame that the actor would be in focus is much more shallow. In a normal movie situation, if an actor is maybe 12 feet from the camera, you'll have an area that could be in focus of maybe 1 or 2 feet. In IMAX, I have an area that would be in focus of maybe 4 or 5 inches if I'm lucky.
Fluid cameras are very important to Chris in telling the story and Wally. And of course, they were able to use the Steadicam, not as easily as they could in a 35, but they can use it. Yes, the camera only has 3-minute loads. Chris says, well, then I'll just have another camera standing by to move in. But if you want that quality, you want that immersiveness, if you have the vision and you want to do it, it's difficult but not impossible, and he wanted to do it.
I'm betting the Joker told you to kill me as soon as we loaded the cash.
No. I killed a bus driver.
Bus driver?
The school bus coming through the wall at the end of the prologue was a surprise that we felt, we really needed to have in that sequence, but it turned out to be actually one of the most difficult things in the movie. It's interesting because as a director, it's the kind of thing that actually you think would be pretty simple. I don't think any of us really were taking into account the logistics of how you get a large school bus inside a building.
It was actually inside a disused post office in Chicago. I think it was a listed building, so we couldn't just knock a wall down and get the bus coming through. So what we actually ended up having to do was build a false wall inside the building, and then we mounted the bus behind that and then put the bus on a pneumatic jerk rig. So on a cue we pressed a button and it hammered the bus straight through the false wall. It was a little bit tricky because we only had a pair of double doors to get this bus through, so it was almost an assembly. We had to cut the bus up into pieces, take it into the building and then put it back together to get the shot.
I believe whatever doesn't kill you simply makes you stranger.
It's a vast canvas. It's a very different way of looking at a character because it's only what is head on. It's only when you look into his eyes that things really start happening. So part of the Joker thing was very much designed with being like a laser beam, which would draw you into the performance. But the IMAX thing, of course, gave me an enormous amount of room to have the audience be inside the sound.
It gave this movie such a distinct personality from the other one. We carved out the language of the score, really, and I think one thing Chris is very adroit at is maintaining a quintessentially disciplined approach.
We, in some instances, used the footage with the IMAX cameras, and Gary Rizzo, the dialog mixer, did a great job of filtering as much of that noise as he could out. In a lot of cases, we just scrapped the sound, but they weren't generally dialogue sequences, so we were able to just replace the sound. There's only a couple of shots in there where we used live sound. The rest is ADR and Foley.
It was a really, really boundary-breaking, revolutionary stuff, and it turned out very, very well, and inspired us as well to go on and increase our IMAX components. Once we saw that big opening shot of the helicopter, we realized all aerials really have to be IMAX because it has so much punch and works so well.
From the get-go, we went to the studio, we all went, and we said, look, this is something that we want to do. We really want to try it, and we think it'll have great value because as big an event as it's going to be, it's going to make it even a bigger event, and it does. It's fun doing things like that. It makes the filmmaking experience very fresh all the time, and it's really great to be part of that.
I'm very pleased with the results of our IMAX photography. It's the world's highest resolution film format, and it creates an extraordinarily immersive image on the IMAX screen, which is a colossal, 8-story screen. It throws the audience right into the action in a way that no other film format could.